When you do open it up, notice that it's an EPS file. If you simply double click it, sometimes it's going to convert it to a PDF. It's not going to open up in Illustrator, so make sure you drag this into Illustrator to work from. And this is what I want you to do. You're going to take these words. Obstacles are those frightful things you see when you take your eyes off your goal. This is what I want it to look like. Now, it doesn't have to look 100% just like this. So if yours is a little bit different, that's totally okay. The main thing is I want you to practice making your distortions using the envelope distort on these different words. And let's take them one at a time. I'll zoom in and we'll look at the obstacles first. So you get an idea of what shape it should be filling up with this particular word. Now for these, remember when we chose them, you can go to Object and Envelope Distort, and we've been working with the warp, this first option to choose from. And some of these are pretty good, so you can turn on preview and you can pick a style that happens to match what you see. So which style works best for this one? Top one. Arc lower one, exactly. So if I had to choose one, I would make it arc lower this way. I'm going to hit cancel, however. The first thing, just to make sure it fills in, I'm going to make this a little bit larger to fill from one edge to the other. If you need to, you can shrink it down, but for now I'll keep it about that size. The main thing is that it's filling from left to right the entire thing. Now when I do the distortion, remember you can turn on preview. We'll arc the lower portion of it. And all I've got to do is adjust my bend to just about fit as close as possible. Like I said, you're not going to get it exactly the way I did, but I'm looking for something as close as possible that you can get. So when I say OK, I can even readjust it from here. So there's obstacles filling in this particular side. Same thing for R and those. So if I chose this one, under warp, which warp fits this particular phrase? Or rise? Alright, so we'll choose rise, turn on preview. Notice that it's rising this way, so if we go the negative side of the bend, it'll rise the other way. And I didn't do it first, but make sure you make it the right size. I can always re-stretch it and place it in there. And if you don't get it perfect, you can always go back to Envelope Distort and reset it with the warp. And keep tweaking it till you get it as perfect as you want it to be. Same way for the word those. You can rise that one and get it to fill inside of this one. However, let's check out the word frightful. So with frightful, if I use the warp, I'll move it so we can see it. Do you see a warp that fits this one? Flag? Let's check out flag. Turn on preview. Flag's not getting it. For this one, the top edge is doing a funky warp and the bottom edge is doing a warp by itself. There's actually not a warp option for this one to be able to do this. Instead, I want us to make our own distortion for this. So I'm going to make it larger. Let's go from one edge to the other. And this is where those other envelope distort options come into play. So I've got it selected. We're going to go to Object, Envelope Distort. Instead of using the warp, I'm going to make a mesh on top of this. And this is called an envelope distortion mesh, or mesh distortion. When I choose it, it's going to ask me for some options. I'm going to turn on preview and you'll see what it looks like. A mesh is, think about a mesh net. It's dividing things up into smaller little areas. In this case, we've got the number of rows and columns. And you can see it on here. I've got 4 different rows and 4 columns inside of this. And you can add more. The more rows and columns you have, the more detail you can get. But in general, the more detail you have, the harder it is to move around. So that's kind of the trade-off that you have. I'm going to keep mine at 4x4 for this one. And I'm going to say OK. So just like with these other envelope distortions, it's inside of an object that's going to fit a specific shape. Also notice I've got little vector points. And so if I want to move individual vector points, I use my white arrow, and I can click on these individual points, and I can move them up. So watch what happens. Notice this one's easily moving into shape. and it's stretching out that particular area. This is the essence of what an envelope distortion allows you to do. So using that white arrow, I can push these around. I even have Bezier handles to adjust a curve, and it's warping the text to fit along that area. So if you have a specific area that you need to fill in this case there was this awkward little negative space right here, make a mesh and you're able to easily fill it in. Notice it's curving down, so I'm going to use this Bezier curve to pull it back up. And now I can make my own distortion to fit however I want it to be. Pretty cool? Do be careful that you click directly onto a point. If you do click in the middle of it, you can move an entire area and get really distorted very quickly. And you can come up with some fun different type of things. But those psychedelic posters where you see a lot of words blending into one another, this is one way you can digitally do that. And so now I've got Frightful filling in that particular area. You can spend more time making it look perfect. I'm going to go quickly for this one. Things is pretty easy. That's just another envelope distortion. However, when I choose it, you may need to make it a little bit shorter. So let's put this down at the bottom. There we go, just stretching it out. In this case, we're going to arc the upper side of it. Pull that up to fit. Here's another pesky one. This one needs to be distorted down this way. So in this case, I've got 3 different words. Be careful that you choose all 3 of them because they're all separate. We're going to stretch this out. And instead of using the warp, we're going to make its own mesh. Turn on preview. You can add more or less. I'm just going to keep it, maybe I'll add a few more. And then use your white arrow to move individual points down into place or move them up. You may have to move more than one, as in this case, to get it to fit all within there. And then you can move it around for this area. Any great ideas coming to mind so far? Things you want to try and do? Let me show you one more way of doing this that may be a little bit easier. It's a little less control, but it'll give you another option to fill in something. Rather than making a mesh to fill in this particular object, it would be great if I could just draw off this object and tell the words to fill in that object or to fill in that space. So I'm going to take these and just kind of move them into place. We'll make them bigger. Whoop. Remember to hold down your shift key if you want to keep everything proportional, but if not, we're not going to worry about that today. So I've got it filling relatively a good amount of the size. I'm going to use my pen tool. We'll set my fill to none, stroke to black. I'm going to redraw off this shape just real quickly. Alright, so I've got the shape redrawn. Remember in your stacking order, anything that you draw new is on top of things that are created previously, so everything else is below. This is very, very important. I'm now going to select everything inside of here. I've got the words selected and I've got my shape selected. When I go to Object, Envelope Distort, this third option is Make with Top Object. The object that's on top is that object that I just drew. So when I choose this, it's going to automatically fill it in with the shape that you created. Now notice you are going to lose a little bit of control. It's basically like doing a mesh, but if the mesh was just a 1x1. But everything else is filled inside of here. If you do want to edit the contents of it, move things around, remember you can go to Edit Contents, and then you can select individual things and kind of move them about inside there. Or you can change the color of them. In this case, we're not going to worry about the color. But to edit the envelope, go back to Edit Envelope under Envelope Distort, and you can use your white arrow to make tweaks and adjustments for this one. So for one of these, I want you to make your own shape and make an envelope with top object for this one. and then you can fill out the rest of these from here. With off, I'll give you just kind of a heads up. With this one, you're going to need to absolutely stretch it out to fill out something like this. So this was kind of like what I drew up on the board with the word mamas. You may have to stretch out. It'll look funky on here for now, but once you apply the warp to it, in this case I think I used arch, it'll start making a little bit more sense. It is a little bit thin, so maybe I'll pull it up and readjust the arch to fit inside of there. Reset it with the warp. Oh, it's going to be difficult for me. But y'all play around and try to get it as close as possible. There we go. To the example that I'm giving you off to the side. Pretty cool. When you are finished, the next thing you should be doing as far as doing a design and making up your own design, you can start by choosing what words are most important, do a shape layout if you want to get a design going, or start playing around with the different fonts that are on the computer that you can work with to play things, to play placement. I will give you a tip on making this type of design. I'm going to make a new document. Got 4 artboards. When you use your type tool, if you're used to working in InDesign, of course you need to click and drag and you make your own text box and you type everything inside of this text box. For this project, I want you to break that habit. Instead, use your type tool to just click once and type on a line by itself. So if I wanted to type out one word at a time, mamas, it's not plural. So mamas is by a word by itself. This gives me a bounding box that I can easily change up. Make a copy of it. Don't. Make a copy of it. Let. This way, by having each word by itself, you can easily move these around. You can change from one font to another quickly. And you don't have to worry about selecting text, making sure it fits into a text box, everything's the same. Just clicking once and typing it out will give you a lot better control over your design that you're working with. Another tip, notice that with my type tool or when type selected, I can choose my font from this drop-down menu, but it's only giving me the name of it. Remember, you can click on the character, the word character, and this will pull up your characters palette. From the characters palette, you get an example of what it looks like. So this is a great way of just kind of determining the style that you want. And I know some of them are kind of small, but it's a lot better than having to guess, well, what does Palantino look like? Well, there it is from there. Questions so far on doing this layout? All cool? Before I forget, I got one more thing for you. If you do want to install your own font, there's some great little font websites. Does anybody know any good ones? Dafont.com. That's everybody's favorite one. Dafont.com. This is a great place to find free fonts of all different sizes. Now, don't go crazy with this. Don't start installing 100 million different fonts. Find the ones that you know really works well for your design. For instance, if you're looking for something that's a good scripted font, sometimes handwritten script works out, so I've chosen this one. I like Dafont because you can type in some specific text right here. So let's say I wanted to know what cowboys looks like. And maybe we'll show a bunch of different fonts. When I hit submit, now I see what the font looks like within this one. If you want to download a font, you can choose download. So let's say I really wanted this Quark Messy. We'll open it up. Usually it will download to your downloads folder in its own little folder, in this case right here. To install a font on a Macintosh computer is really easy. Double click. It's either a TTF or an OTF depending on how it's created. But if you double click it, it'll open up what a program called Font Book, and it'll say this is the font, do you want to install it? You can click install font, and if there's any problems with it, it'll let you know. If there's not, Font Book will open up and you can see it's been added to your font list. Now I can go into a program like Illustrator, and what was it called? Quark Messy? No, P. Hadn't shown up just yet. There it is, Quirky Messy. And now I can start using this font from itself. Very, very easy to be able to do that. If you want to install fonts, you got my blessing to do it. Just don't install 100 million different ones, because I have to go back and take them off because it takes forever to find the fonts you really do need. Okay, I'm going to turn your computers back over to you, and so y'all can continue working through this project. I would do the exercise first,